Oh, darling. Well, it's good to see you, darling. Come on in. Have a cup of tea. Oh, yeah, it's good to see you.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Chesterfield. I'm your host, Ben Rayner, right here at my home in Toronto. This week our guest is Fred Penner, a beloved children's entertainer who for a lot of us feels like he's been around forever. And in a way he kind of has. This year was the 40th anniversary of his signature song, The Cat Came Back, which gets a lot of airtime around here thanks to my own daughter. He was the host of the long-running CBC show Fred Penner's Place, which aired for about 12 years on CBC in the 80s and 90s. He's a member of the Order of Canada. His latest album, Hear the Music, was kind of calling in favors from younger musicians such as Ron Sexsmith, Bajie Boulat, Alex Cuba. What can I say about Fred? He's awesome if you're a child of any age. He's somewhere off in the Vancouver Islands, and we'll get him on the line in a minute. But interestingly enough, he's picked a work of art from the other side of the country and our other ocean, the Atlantic, a painting of Cape Spear, the easternmost point in Canada, by Newfoundland artist David Blackwood. Before we get to that, though, I should remind you that the Chesterfield is brought to you by Friends of Canadian Broadcasting. Friends is a nonprofit organization dedicated to helping Canadians tell their own stories in their own country, and it's funded completely by individual Canadians just like you. So if you want to get involved, maybe help us make some more episodes and potentially qualify for free giveaways such as books and music and more in the process, just go to friends.ca when you're done watching the video and see about helping us out maybe. All right, enough of that. Let's get Fred on the line. Hello, Fred Penner. Welcome to the Chesterfield. It's a
My,
my
pleasure.
Where are you today? Where do I find
I'm on Vancouver Island. My wife and I, we bought a property between Comox and Qualicum Beach, in a little place called Bowser, and we are settled in here on a half acre of land and beautiful trees, and this is a pretty neat place to be hiding out for a while.
How have you been faring during this whole COVID thing?
I was in the middle of my 40th anniversary Cat Came Back tour when this was when it came down in Edmonton at the Winspear Theatre. That show was canceled, and the Red Deer show was canceled, and all my BC dates that were coming after that were bumped into 2021, and we'll see if that even happens. Yeah. But we scrambled and we got back. I was on the road with a couple of other folks. They went back to Winnipeg. I came to the island, and so I've been here for 6 months now. And this is the longest stretch of time I've ever been off the road for over 45 years.
Well, it's funny you bring up The Cat Came Back. I'm in my 40s, and I grew up that song and that record, and Ebenezer Sneezer, and everything, the Polka Dot Pony. But I am now reliving my youth through the eyes of my 3.5-year-old daughter, who is
congratulations!
The Cat Came Back. So she's discovering Fred Penner, and I think that's kind of like there's got to be three? She's probably fourth generation Fred head now, right?
Yeah, there seems to be a few of them out there. Yeah, the generations continuous. Yeah.
The point of the Chesterfield is to give us an opportunity to talk with Canadian artists such as yourself about other works of Canadian art that have meant a lot to you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very happy that you've chosen the work that you have. Would you like to tell the people what we are going to be talking about today, and then we'll dive into it?
Sure, certainly. Yeah, David Blackwood is the Canadian artist, and as I'm sure you know, I've traveled, coast to coast to coast many times in this incredible country, and I have been to this place that the work of art is based on probably half a dozen times over my life. It's Cape Spear, which is the easternmost part of Canada, and it is wild and it's rugged, and you feel insignificant when you go there because the Atlantic Ocean is pounding around you.
Well, I have to tell you, when I moved to Canada, I lived in Newfoundland, and my long-suffering partner is from there. So whenever we go back to Newfoundland and stay in St. John's, I always, and my customary end of trip hike is I start at Cape Spear and hike into Fort Amherst. It's 16 kilometers.
Oh, yeah.
And I do it. But and one of the beautiful things about Blackwood, this particular painting of Cape Spear, but also his work in general, I think if you've been to Newfoundland, it so gets it. Do you know what I mean?
It's right on. They say that the difference between the Atlantic and the Pacific Ocean is on the Pacific, people have tried to mold the ocean into their world, and on the Atlantic Ocean, the ocean is king, is queen, is the powerful force. Um, you cannot control the Atlantic Ocean. You just have to adapt to it, if that makes any sense at all. But
I mean, having grown up on the Atlantic,
yeah,
yes, you have no choice but to adapt to
you
it.
understand? Yeah, well, really. So the one of my most memorable times there was on a trip called with Canada 150, when Canada's 150th birthday was happening. Um, Students on ice put together this amazing event where in 15 trips, starting in Toronto, going through the St. Lawrence Seaway, tracing basically the outline of Canada from Toronto to Victoria in 150 days. And I was asked to be part of the fifth run of 10 days that ran from St. John's up to Nain. And we traced up that coastline, stopped in all these beautiful little spots, Rigolet, and we did go to Cape Spear. And because this was a trip of inclusion, about healing, because all of the communities, lots of First Nation, and just some tragic things that were happening there. So we were doing ceremonies on a daily basis to bring us together as a group, because there were scientists and media people and just a whole range of 20, 30 people on this particular trip. And one of the things we did, and this is the memory of Cape Spear, is we had a First Nation lady who was one of our spiritual guides. We did a smudging, and everybody had a piece of the smudge that they would hold in their hands. They would find a place somewhere on the Cape Spear point, and with intention and with focus and with real energy, release that thing that we were holding to the ocean.
Could you describe this particular Blackwood work that hangs in your place?
Okay.
It's quite an iconic portrait of Cape Spear, isn't it?
Oh, it truly is, and that's it, and it's exactly the way it looks. This is in my mind the definitive vision of Cape Spear. So it is a ominous and dangerous and powerful point of Canada, the easternmost part of this incredible country, and I go there and I imagine this is where the Titanic, not far from where the Titanic went down, in 1912. So it's got some of that energy to it. I could look at it for hours and just imagine the kind of strength that David was bringing to his work at that moment.
Blackwood is one of these panels. I mean, if you've been to Newfoundland and you've borne witness to that landscape, and I mean, he gets the colors and the tones, and it is, it's quite often gray and kind of bleak there. But
Right.
But he's one of those painters. I think that people, even if they don't know who David Blackwood is, and they see his work, it's so distinctively his own thing. It's almost like photo real, but kind of surreal at the same time. And
yes,
but I think he's as distinctive as Alex Colville or Tom Thompson.
Yes, exactly. Out of the group of seven, you bet.
Yeah. No, it's a really. I mean, is it some? What's your emotional tie to this thing? Is it just because you have such cherished memories of Newfoundland, or does it stir up something primal in you?
Well, I've it definitely feels very, very primal. I think part of what it does is it gives me an appreciation of what this country is all about. What Canada has to offer. Anybody who's open to exploring this. I feel when I see this, the blessedness that I feel for having been able to go to this part of the country, to travel extensively, across across Canada, from, as I said, coast to coast to coast. I've seen them all, and it just gives me a real power. No, power is not the word. Actually, I'm going to back up a little bit. I was I'm 73 years old now.
You sound like a day over 16.
Yeah, exactly. Well, internally, I'm probably about 25, but the rest of me says something different. I like the feeling of almost of melancholy, of a sadness, of uh, it's not painful, but it does conjure something in me of the bleakness makes me feel um, like I'm really connected to this picture. You know, and not just because I've seen it because I hadn't been there when I bought it. You know, I just saw the picture and thought there is
Oh, that's interesting. I
an
didn't know you
awesome
had
bit
done
of
that.
work. And when I finally got there, it was like running to Mecca. You know, it was there. It is. That's the picture that David saw and drew, and it. Um, I don't know. It's just one of those pictures. And as you mentioned, the group of seven. You know, being out here on the West Coast now, I'm we go for a hike, and it's oh yeah, I see that in Lauren Harris, or you know, if McDonald ever got out here, or um, the Lauren Harris stuff is interesting because when he got to the coast, things started changing. He started getting quite surreal in his images, and you know, so I can relate so many Canadian artists to the places where they created the work, and having seen some of those places. So Canadian art really is very, very deep in my spirit.
I gather that you're on a bit of a personal crusade right now to get Fred Penner's Place, which ran for 12 years back in the 80s and 90s.
Oh, yeah.
On streaming service. I find it criminal. I didn't know there was only one season available on CBC Gem, but I feel like that show had such a place in so many lives. It deserves to be out there for future generations of children of all ages to enjoy. No?
Well, come on. This is a CBC event here. Friends of, let's make some calls. People, you know, I so the way that's evolved is once the series went off the air in 1997, there were no reruns. It basically just disappeared from the Canadian purview. And then after a while, I started getting more people saying, "What happened to the series? I want to see some. I want to show it to my kids, etc., etc." So I started calling, you know, CBC kids and saying, "Here's what's happening. You know, this is not over. There's still a value of maintaining the series on some level." And so they had to go through a whole range of contracts, because all the shows there were writers, there were, you know, there was money that needed to be paid before shows could be aired. So it started getting a little complicated, but they were able to put down. I think there's maybe 20 or so episodes from different seasons. So there is no one season that exists, other than, you know, I mean, if people have posted things on their own. But there's not many episodes. But I've been pushing and saying, you know, let's get that up there. I know that they do exist, or to my knowledge, they are in the archives in Toronto. So it is just a matter of somebody going in and, you know, and putting a check mark and throwing it online. So it is still possible, and but that's where that is. But as you're saying, you would like your kids, your child to know what Fred Penner's Place was,
Oh my God, she'd love it, Fred. She'd love
because
it.
you grew up with it, and I would still be doing the series now if, you know, if it hadn't reached its conclusion.
You're well off retirement, Fred Penner.
Right.
I should ask you, since this series, the Chesterfield. Although I'm not sitting on my Chesterfield today, I'm sitting on a chair. It was too bright over there. Um,
That's
this is, a project under the auspices of Friends of Canadian Broadcasting, and I believe you are a donor to Friends of Canadian Broadcasting. So I think we should get you to talk about that a little bit, and why, the mission of this organization to protect and celebrate Canadian culture is so important.
Oh, sure. I mean, from the beginning, when I was growing up, there were two stations in Winnipeg, CBC and CTV. And so you didn't have a whole lot of choice to play with. And when Fred Penner's Place came on board in 1985, it was still the same situation. So people in large and small communities were able to access the incredible, both television and particularly the audio programming that has been so vital to the Canadian fabric. When you get shows like As It Happens, and the Peter Zosky and the Q World with dear Newfoundlander Tom Power. Now, you turn on those shows, you're not cluttered with advertising. It is an opportunity for the viewer or the listener to understand in the most profound way what is happening in this country, and talking to people in different communities and hearing what they're going through, so you feel that connection with your country, which is really important. It's not isolationist, but it's the value of appreciating who you are, where you live, the values you want to bring to this world, to this country, the support that you have, the health system. I mean, all of the pieces of Canada are represented in so many ways through CBC, and the documentaries that are happening now are second to none. And just back to the Fred Penner's Place world, in '85, those shows were going to every corner of Canada. And a little story: I was up in Rankin Inlet, north of Manitoba, in the territories, in Nunavut, and I played a festival there. I was in the airport, this little airport, and the door opens up, and in comes a woman, with a baby, with her sealskin outfit on, which is the most spectacular thing you've ever seen. It's got the big hoop on the back where the baby sits. It's old. It's the way they've always dressed and grown, and clothing they've made. It's historically, it's incredible, and it's like you're an anachronism. You walk in and you see this person, and it could have been 150 years ago, and I was there, and this woman comes in and she looks at me and goes, "Fred Penner," and she runs over to me and gives me a big, and I'm thinking, that's the power of CBC. That was the value of that corporation, and what it allowed for me to share whatever I had with that part of the world. When we did the Canada 150 up the east coast of Canada, every village that we stopped at, it was the same kind of thing. People coming up and saying, "I grew up with you. I remember you. I thank you for doing what you did, and you were my childhood." And it just blew me away. I felt so honored to have been again allowed to do that. And so CBC, thank you.
Fred, thanks so much for doing this. It's a real pleasure. I could talk to you for hours. Most people would probably tune us out after a while.
We'll do it again sometime.
I look forward to doing this in person sometime down the road.
Likewise. Thank you so much.